let me try it and see. I guess we'll find out.
Go live. What we talked about.
If you want to go to the live page, you can see what happens.
So let me try it and see. I guess we'll find out.
All right.
If you want to go to the live page, you can see what happens.
I won't.
We're live.
But,
just like that.
I'll open the pop-out chat window at least.
Welcome everybody to the podcast at Delphi.org. I'm your host, Jim McKeith.
Welcome.
Joining me to this side is our C++ IT product manager, David Millington.
To this side is
all the way from Estonia.
IT product manager, David Millington.
Hello.
Via Australia.
All the way from Estonia.
Are you in Australia now?
Australia, via Estonia. It's even further.
Via Australia?
Right, yes.
Are you in Australia now?
Yeah. No, I'm in Estonia right now, but I am Australian. I'm an Australian citizen. I just happen to be in far north Europe.
We should bounce your
video
off
to North
Australia
America,
or something.
streaming video to the rest of the world.
Right.
For fun's sake.
We should bounce your video.
Oh, your video's not updating. Are you turning your stream back on?
For fun's sake. Yeah.
It is
on.
Okay, we'll figure that out. And then up above is Craig Chapman, our software consultant down in Austin, Texas. Hello, Craig.
Down in Austin, Texas.
David, you're not updating.
Hello, Craig.
Start.
Yeah.
And so we've changed things up again this time around. I've set up our own streaming server that we're bouncing all of our streams off of, and so David and Craig, let's see how I can point right directions here. There we go. I feel all goofy. David and Craig are now bouncing their streams off the streaming server, which is then coming into my computer, which is then compositing it all together and streaming it out. I think next time we're going to set up a second computer that will do the compositing and have 3 streams anyway. So certainly open to feedback, comments, besides the fact David's still frozen, and for what we can do better in the future. I do hear you, but I still don't see you, although... Uh-oh, we're getting lots of echo. Oh, Craig, you better watch out. Ian's going to register a Delphi license plate in Texas. Oh, really? Amateur Plate let you do that? Interesting. All right. Hopefully that fixed the echo, Ian.
Fixed the echo, Ian?
I don't know if I was streaming then. I had my audio muted. So yes, I'm more than happy for somebody else to get the Texas plate.
That's cool. All right, hey, David, go ahead and
I
say
have
something.
my ham radio plate, which works
stream.
on all 3 of my vehicles. So.
That's cool. All right, hey, David, go ahead and say something.
The street audio is not coming through. I'm getting audio through Skype.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, the street audio is not coming through. I'm getting this audio through Skype.
Maybe relaunch OBS. That's weird.
Maybe relaunch OBS. That's weird.
Okay.
And it looks like we've lost David everywhere. Is he back?
I don't know.
I don't know if you can hear me on the stream. I'm getting something like 70%.
I do hear you on the
frames
stream now.
when uploading, so I guess it would be my local.
Craig, were you muted on the stream?
I do hear you on the stream now. And okay. Craig, were you muted on the stream?
Gotta stop doing that.
I was briefly. That's why I repeated the thing about the licenses.
Okay. I don't know if you can hear me on the stream. I'm getting something like 70% dropped frames.
Oh, it's alright. I found it. I was going to ask where you were looking at the drop frames. Just to make sure I'm not dropping any
frames. So not as bad.
I've dropped 0.2% of my frames. So
I'm at 0 so far. You see, I keep telling you guys, get a grown-up computer. Actually, yeah, the echo So the echo is back. It must be me. That's why I muted in the first place. What to do? I guess I can turn down the gain on the mic, see if that helps.
The echo maybe is coming through. Oh, you don't have headphones on. So yeah. The Skype is coming through. Coming back in your mic.
So yeah. The Skype is coming back in your mic.
Okay.
All right, so I have a
ahead
couple
and
things.
fix that.
David, you look like you're working
on
on
it
it.
until I do.
Oh wait. Nope, you're frozen. Okay, it looks like I'm getting audio from you on the stream. Okay, so the big news yesterday, Blast Off, which I don't even know if this is going to play here. All right,
I can hear you, so even if the
audio
video isn't working, we can chat anyway.
Buffering like crazy. But anyway, this game was written in Delphi
Right.
and was just launched yesterday. It's on Steam. You can go find it on Steam. It's called Blast Off, and check it out. It's pretty fun. It's actually pretty difficult, but it looks really nice. It's I played a little bit of it, and it was a lot tougher than I wanted to admit, for sure. But I have the link to the Steam store, I think. Here, let's see if I can find that. Steam store. Oh, I closed it. Steam Blast Off. There it is. Anyway, so you can check it out. It is release date January 22nd. So is that today or yesterday? That was yesterday, yeah. So it was officially released yesterday. I played earlier release version of it, but you can check it out now. That's available in the store for $10, or I think it's like $12 if you want to get the soundtrack with it. Since I've already got it, it's going to give me a different pricing, but which is pretty cool. And then another game that's pretty popular, and I should check and make sure that this is more or less working here. All right, another game that's pretty cool looking that's being built with Delphi is StoneQuest by Zodomon. That's the handle he goes by. Anyway, this one is really impressive. He's the game engine, and both these game engines, I'm pretty sure they built from themselves from scratch. I know there are a few Delphi game engines that are pretty popular, but this one he's building it in 3D, and he's showing off the new volumetric flames and the lighting involved, and so it's really quite impressive looking. And he's going to change the color of the flames here in a second too, and show that the color, the glow of the flame affects the materials around it as well.
That is pretty awesome.
But he has another video. He shows seasons changing, which is really, really cool as well. He has like snow and rain and... Yep. Yeah, so you are a dragon in this game.
Is this the same one? He's got a dragon modelled in it, and you see the dragon flying around? Right, okay. Yeah, I saw this a while back,
kind of his,
and I know
labor
that he's
of
been
love,
working
as
on
he
it
says.
for a really long time.
This is the wind hitting the flames. Yeah, StoneQuest. Yep, so now the lights, he just changed the flames to green, which is...
So Jim, I can't see what
and
you're
then
doing
he actually
right
took
now
out the
because
green.
I
Anyway, it's
closed
very
all
cool.
my
If you check it out, it's just Google StoneQuest, Zodomon, Zodomon,
but that would be StoneQuest.
This one, and check it out. And then he has
I have seen some of the
Patreon,
videos on
which you can
YouTube
back
that
as
are
well.
very impressive.
So see how everything...
I think I've seen the weather changing
flames.
one,
That's
and
so
maybe one other.
That's
Yes.
pretty cool.
It is.
It's
So
gonna
yeah,
be
someone
all,
asks, says,
custom
what language
shaders
is built?
and-
And I can tell it's totally custom. He says Delphi plus DirectX 9. And I did have a
DirectX
few
9,
technical
okay.
things I wanted to share today besides these cool games. And I know there's lots of game development. A few years back, I actually did judging for a Pascal game development contest. So I know there are game engines and such that are in Delphi that are out there. So, how did you say you pronounce Grigi? David? Grigi. I like that rather than what I tried to say. So we'll go. Yes, really good stuff. So they have this one here on the
Well, I
NVIDIA
pronounce it
starter
Grigi,
kit. I think last week I talked
but I
about
don't know if
the
that's the correct way
dark
or
editor
not.
themes. They're now MVPs.
If any of you guys at Grigi are watching today, then feel free
Face
to
detection. Lots of just
write into the
cool
chat.
stuff. If I remember
or email us how
correctly,
to pronounce it.
and I may be incorrect, but I think
We're all
these
fans
guys
of your blog posts.
started that.
Good stuff.
They originally were working at a company that built this video conferencing software written in Delphi. That was pretty cool. I can't remember what it was called, but anyway. The reason I wanted to bring it up though is because they have this project here, this cloud logger that you can use. And I was using this recently, and it worked really, really well. And so this is, if you're doing any kind of application development and you need to debug your application, this is the way, or this is, you're going to want a logging tool of some sort. And so what this allows you to do is you can, from your application, you just say send, and it's going to send that message to the log, right? So this could be some debug information. This could be some, you can set it up to say enter and exit. Let's see if I can find this. Enter method, so enter method, exit method. You can just send, general information. You can have it, sending your exceptions, whatever you want to do, can all be done through this. You have, in order to do it, which actually I should tell them because it took me a second to figure it out. You have to, it says getting started. It says use this and then say send, but you also have to connect it. So there's someplace in here. There's a CONNECT. Yeah, you have to call connect, and you're going to connect it to a dispatcher, which you have to run your dispatcher on a machine someplace. It could be on a server on the internet or on a local machine, a local network. And then give it a service name. And service name's case sensitive. So once you call connect from the application, it then sends, every time that those send messages occur, it sends that to the dispatcher. And then you run the log viewer, which is this application here. And the log viewer then can view the messages. And so each instance of the application gets its own tab here. So if you have multiple applications logging or multiple instances of application logging, each one will have its own tab, and then you can get access to all the useful bits of information here. So it's free. It's on open source. It's on Stack Overflow, or not Stack Overflow. It's on GitHub, which is where I'm at now. And you can check it out there. I guess I should make this bigger, huh? Since let me do that. I forget that I'm compositing all the video now here.
Yeah, I got a message here that David's voice was far behind yours. Jim, I don't know if you're reading his stream or through Skype.
The OBS system.
Right, so that should be on time unless David's
Yes.
up rate isn't going quite quick enough.
That's what I should do. Is come up with
It
some
seems
sort of
David's having problems today. It could
graphic
be
to
the
fill
case.
in the bottom portion here or something like that. Maybe kind of Delphi podcast logo. Yes. Yep. I
You
started.
you
I set up a
do
couple
know
scenes, so
you
I have a
can
scene here.
preset
This scene's
scenes,
just
right?
Craig, and this scene's just David, which apparently he's not working now, and this scene's just me. But oh, and now this one's not working at all. Oh, there you go. You're back, Craig. All right, so we're having some bandwidth issues somewhere. 10 seconds behind Jim.
Well, you know, the
Yes.
actual live stream is.
But if it's
Behind
behind on
anyway,
my
right,
OBS, yeah. So David, I don't hear you at all. Are you still
on
there?
your system. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I was gonna. Yep. I do use wireless. You mentioned that last time, and I was gonna say, do you have bad weather there? Because I know wireless can be affected by bad weather. So that's probably what's going on.
So.
I'm still here.
Unless you're sharing your
Just been playing with the video
Jim,
settings to try and get the
because we've
upload
got
as minimal
David, I
as
think, on
possible.
Skype only
It should
right
be
now.
really low res right now.
David.
So it
I'm
shows,
dropping close to 80% of the video frames that are being uploaded.
I see David coming through OBS.
Okay. On the stream, I'm seeing David frozen with his eyes closed. So. Of course.
I thought we improved things this time, but apparently we made it worse. Or we could just blame it on the snow.
Apparently not.
All right. Well,
I'm getting 0 dropped frames, and I don't think I've been too far behind on the output. So
Yeah,
I think it is a
I'm getting-
bandwidth concern going on.
wow.
Oh, naturally it shows a terrible picture to...
Or maybe we didn't choose a beefy enough
Well,
stream server. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well. All right. We'll try and figure this out for next week.
audio.
Oh,
Bye, David.
goodbye, David.
Okay, so now it's just the Craig and Jim show instead of the Craig and Jim and David show.
Great stuff. I figure if David's still around, he may be able to come through a Skype only connection, but otherwise, no. He's
So I
not.
was talking
Okay.
about Greedy.
All right. So where were we?
Greedy logging. So the cool thing is the
Greedy logging?
the code is cross-platform, so it runs across Windows, iOS, Android, Mac OS, and Linux. I've tested it. I'm trying to remember what platforms I tested on. I didn't test on all the platforms, but I got it running at least on Android and Windows. I can't remember if I ran it also on. Well, Craig, we just lost you. Was that something you did? Wow. All right, you're back. Maybe it has a bandwidth
I'm
issue
still
on that
here.
server we're set up.
It could be, but
The stream went
did you
white
did
for
you
a
actually
second.
lose
There,
me? Did you
it
lose
just
my
did it
stream
again.
on your end? Okay. If I'm going to say if there's a bandwidth
I guess it
bottleneck
could be that
anywhere,
I'm not getting
it
enough
ought to
bandwidth
be
coming in.
your machine because you're compositing.
That seems odd, though. Anyway, all right. Well, so definitely check this out. Greedy Audio or Greedy Cloud Logger, not audio. It is in the Get It package manager here as well. So if you come in here to Greedy Login, go in here to package manager, Get It package manager.
Greedy logger.
And search log.
I actually have a logging package that I wrote myself, which I tend to use for everything, and it doesn't follow the same kind of setup as most of the other loggers. Like,
Code
for
site.
example, I've seen what was the name of it? Ray Konopka's logging tool, code site. That's it. And Grigi seems to be similar in that it's a send call to send messages. I have something slightly different going on because I wanted to put language translation into the log messages. So I don't tend to.
Are you one
to
of those
use
people
third
that
party,
if
but
you didn't write it
mine
yourself, you
isn't
don't use
as
it?
capable
Besides
as
Delphi.
theirs is, obviously. I'm not anti third party components, but because I am now basically hobbyist,
Yeah.
I do tend to write everything myself because why not? That's what I enjoy doing with Delphi. So, yeah,
All right,
I'll use
so
third party
run this
components
demo
where
here.
it benefits, but I like
Local
digging
host.
into writing things for myself.
So here we go. We've got the FMX client. It has the ID, the PID for the process ID for this instance. So if I ran a second instance of it, it would have a second one there. I can send basic messages here, sample info message, warning messages. So they have different levels of logging. You can have errors, warnings, and info. And then in the logger itself, you can say what level you want, or I'm sorry, in your application you're writing, you can specify what level to send. And so in your application code, you can change it from debug mode to
Right.
whatever level you want to send. So that way you leave all the messages in, but then you change which messages actually broadcast, which messages don't. So different data types you can send. You can send an object.
Right.
So here's an object itself. This actually uses RTTI to just get all the information from the object, which is pretty cool. You can send just a chunk of memory here as well. And all the other standard types. Although I did notice, what was it? I was doing the Git directory using path. Oh gosh, I can't remember which one it was now. Anyway, I was giving a Git listing of direct files from a directory on the Android device to see if I was if I couldn't load a file. I was checking to make sure the file existed, and I just had something spelled wrong or something like that, or a case sensitive, and it comes back as a dynamic array, which is the only option here it doesn't seem to support. So I had to turn it into a string and send it as a comma separated string instead. But
Right.
yep.
That's probably down to the RTTI stuff around dynamic arrays. It works a little weird. I think I don't know, but I think the compiler generates a new type for each size of array, something like that. Because I know I've tried to pass like a dynamic array into a procedure before where I've specified the data type literally in the procedure header, and if I then create an alias
I'm
of
not
that
sure how
type
this
and try to
custom
send that
watches
in, it
works,
won't
but
go
that's
in.
pretty cool. As I change this, it automatically shows the value here. I'll have to play with that some more. And then it tracks
It's pretty cool.
object allocations here. Right there, there we go. Allocated memory. So we see the delta. And then we deallocate.
That is pretty cool. 'Cause it looks like you can get, like you can actually use your debug watches. I'm guessing you can get
didn't see
stack and
stacking
heap
heap,
info.
but
Can you?
yeah, I mean, you have the memory allocation here of
I guess you
individual
probably
objects,
just have to send it.
which is actually pretty cool. So
Right.
bitmap link apparently is using quite a bit. Can't sort them. Oh, come on. All right. Well, I can add that functionality and submit it to GitHub, I guess. Anyway, pretty cool. It's available in the Git Package Manager. Check it out. Like I said, the only thing it took me a minute to figure out was I had to call connect, and that what you're connecting to, the service is case sensitive. So if you use default with the capital D, you have to connect with the capital D, and then you run the broker here that just bounces everything off of it.
Right. That is very cool. I really should get one of these loggers because they've got so many features in them.
Yeah, I've used various ones in the past.
Just makes sense to have something in use. I should try this.
But I wasn't using anything currently, and I started, doing something. I was like, I should get a logger, but one works on Android, and it's like, oh, this one does everything I want it to do. So, yeah.
This actually that you can it works on Android and iOS.
Now
Mac and
it's
Linux,
based
all
off
about
their
That is actually
message
excellent.
queue, zero in key major double mesh protocol. Which I remember looking at a message queue a long time ago, but I have not done anything with them in quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, it's been 6-7 years before I was working with message queues.
Yeah, I remember at one point thinking,
and
I'll just write
if
one,
you've
but
ever
then I
tried
realized
writing one.
they're more complicated than I wanted to jump in and do at that moment.
Yeah. It's not particularly straightforward, especially with most of these message queues. They have a redundancy and stability features, so they'll save all of the messages to disk, for example, and then you don't lose them if the service crashes or what have you. So yeah, writing one becomes a whole new ballgame when you talk about scheduling who receives them and who's tuned into the messages. Do you have a subscriber model or a broadcast
cross-platform
model
nature
and so on?
of the logger and Delphi's component model means dry coding is the norm, makes it a very good choice. And he says he's lazy. Don't write it if someone else has already done it.
Mm-hmm. If someone else has already done it. Yeah, so the thing is, a lot of the time, either somebody else hasn't done what I need, or I'm writing it for the educational value of writing it. So, yeah, if I were writing a product to sell or working for a commercial entity, I would more than likely go out and get third-party components to bolt together everything I needed that I didn't have to write myself. And also, lazy. Lazy is a key word for me. So I am inherently lazy, but when it comes to my code, I actually kind of have a mantra to try and tell myself not to be lazy. And that is, there is some grind involved in writing your own code, but the rewards...
Stefan pointed out, says reinventing a bugged wheel is more fun. There's certainly some truth to that, that's for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a good handful of projects that I do just for the educational value of writing them. And I mean, the stuff I was talking about last week, writing a neural network implementation. So there are very capable neural network libraries out there that I could bind to. But
so I wrote this blog post a while
ago.
ago.
I wouldn't learn nothing.
How to get answers to your questions, and it was kind of inspired by there's How to Ask Questions the Smart Way by Eric S. Raymond. But this is a novel.
Mm-hmm.
He does have a section on Stack Overflow. That's fairly recent. Well, comparatively to how old some of this content in here is. Web and IRC forums. Anyway, so the point is just some things that you want to do as far as how to get answers the first time, really. This is one I I found this picture and I just thought it was hilarious. I had to glue it in here because so many times I get people that ask a question and they don't tell me what they've done or what they've tried, and so the first thing I suggest, like, oh, I did that. I'm like, okay, well, have you done this? I did that. Well, what have you done? What save us some time here. Tell me what you've done. So tell me what you're trying to do, right? See, so many times they say this doesn't work. This doesn't work. And it's like, well, it works, but it doesn't work. What you're expecting it to do. What is it you're expecting it to do, right? Then what have you tried to get to do that? And then if you can, point at what you've looked at as well, that's useful. Especially, like I said, I don't have everything memorized, so if you can save me a step, that's great. But then also, have you Googled it? I can't tell how many times I've had someone ask me a question,
Yeah.
and I type their question into Google, and the first link I give back to them, they're like, "Oh, thank you," and I'm like, "I'm not Google. I've actually the repeat offenders I will use. Let me Google that for you, but only repeat offenders."
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I come across it a whole bunch. It's like I actually feel like delivering the link to the first page of the SERPs from Google is enough of a statement. You know,
Well, that's
rather
why
than
I
actually
like
give
let
them
me
links
Google it
to
for
the
you.
answer. Just say I googled it and I found this.
Which they've expanded now to use other search engines as well, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. I actually made a bit of a mistake recently on Stack Overflow. Actually, I was building that GPU rig, and I had a problem. The thing wouldn't boot, so I went on to Stack Overflow. And I'm always a little tentative to ask questions on public forums because somebody is going to upset me in their answer, no matter how well I ask the question. So I posted on there. I don't ask questions on Stack Overflow too often. I posted on there everything I did, the make and model of all the hardware, everything, every step I'd tried, the symptoms I was having. I post a really long, detailed description of the entire problem, followed by the statement, "Hey, this is only the second ever question I've asked on here, so go easy on me if I've not asked this well. Be polite." And the answer I got really was polite. It was, "There is absolutely nothing wrong with your question or the way you've asked it, but Stack Overflow focuses on software, not hardware. You need to go to this other forum."
Yeah.
It was just completely misplaced.
I've gotten
didn't
fights
know
on
better.
Stack Overflow before about
I
what
do
was
now.
appropriate for Stack Overflow, but anyway, I try and do better about that now.
I'm educated.
Anyway, so I go on about some other things. This is these last 2 points actually for me. So many times that I've gone through the steps of preparing a proper question, right, and especially this one here, the send the minimum code necessary. I can't tell how many times I've done this, right, and said, "Oh, it's not working in my program, so I'll make a sample program to show somebody else," and I make the sample program, and now it works all of a sudden. So then I go and look, and it's like, oh, well, this was causing a side effect in this that was preventing this from doing what I expected it to do, and once I fix this, then that corrects the problem.
Yep. Delivering a spike application. In fact, if you deliver
And
a
that-
spike
that's
application
one of the
the
things I say
very
here is
first
that
time you ask the question,
Doing some of
You'll
these
find that very
steps
often you
here,
don't ask
or
the
doing
question.
these steps here, most of the time means I don't end up having to ask the question. So the John Skeet of Stack Overflow fame, and he has a few books as well, I guess. He wrote a blog post of writing the perfect question and then made a checklist, which I thought was pretty nice here. That says it has a lot of the same things here. Have you done some research before asking a question? Have you explained what you're trying to solve? What you've already tried to solve your problem? Language, platform, version numbers, etc. If your question includes code, have you written a short but complete program? So this is a big deal, especially I get people that send me like the entire DFM of their project, and it's it's got some bitmaps embedded in it, and it's like I don't even know where to start with this.
yeah,
It's code if it doesn't compile, and include the exact compiler error. This is a big deal here also. Too many times, if there's too many steps I have to do to check the problem, then I'm less likely to help. That's just who I am, I guess. So if you could say, hey, this is the code, this is the error message. If I can look at that and say, oh, I've seen this error message before, this is what you need to do, then I can fix that, right? But if I have to recreate your program from a vague description and run it to see the error message to realize, oh, well, that's this, then I'm less likely to be able to do that for you.
Well, a lot of it comes down to so it's how you logically separate your code. So David was commenting on my package lists last week or the week before, and I break down all of my projects, basically broken down into a series of packages, and then I build an application that consumes them at the end. And the reason is, if I have a problem while I'm developing any one of those packages, it's isolated. I wouldn't need to share the entire project. I can create a spike against one package and test, the function that's failing or whatever it might be. But a lot of developers seem to think that just throw it all in and hit build, And so if you're not logically breaking the project down like that, you're going to encounter problems that will be.
I try to do that. I think
to go pick apart.
At a minimum, you should be breaking apart units, right, and say, okay, this unit here does this one operation, one function, right, and that's logically makes sense. I saw a really good thing the other day that said if you have a unit called util, then you're probably taking things too far. But because that's one thing I think, and I had a blog post about the programmer's curse, right? The idea that we tend to say, oh, this bit of code might be reusable, I should make a library that in case I ever want to use it again. But the reality is it's probably better to use this code, and then as soon as you need it elsewhere, then make it into a library, right? You increase the decoupling as necessary, but not before then.
Yeah, well, okay. I would argue against that. So, I'm a huge fan at the same time as being really annoyed by interfaces, because it's fantastic that you can build your implementation separately from your interface. I love the decoupling of that, but I dislike the red tape of having to build an interface for the classes. But what I found is that writing an interface forces you to think, if I wanted to reuse this somewhere else, how would I write it? And so your implementation then, or rather your interface then becomes this independent decoupled thing, and your implementation is also decoupled. You're forced to think that way. And so what you end up with, you end up with a lot of units, but as a consequence, it is reusable from the get-go. You don't have to go back and, if you have to go back and pick it out of an application, then at the time that you're doing that, it's going to be so much more difficult. You might as well just start over and write the implementation again, particularly if it's dependent on variables and things that it's close to. So I like to separate from the beginning, because that's going to keep it all nice and clean. It's separated, and I agree
know
with
exactly
that. Where to go for this function. And
I think that
function,
you
so
need to be writing your code with that in mind. That doesn't mean that everything needs to be a full. If it's reusable, doesn't mean it needs to become a full-fledged framework, reusable framework. But you should think about that, right, and say, well, what. If it's not too complicated, let's make this less coupled, right? Because the goal is the business of the software. That's something I've never been really good at. I'll be honest. Well, I mean, if you're working for a software company, if you're not shipping software, then there's no company. And so...
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess it comes down to...
it depends.
So
that's what I'm saying. It depends.
What you're saying is basically it's going to take you longer
significant amount more time to make that framework, to make that decoupled, then it's not worth the trade-off until you need it. But you should do as much as you can without raising the time cost too high now, right? So...
Time cost too much, yeah. Now, I totally agree with that. The thing that I always find, I've worked with companies that have got what's referred to as their core code. And that core code has this massive amount of value attributed to it because it cost an awful lot to write. The investment's been made. But the truth is that core code is generally a sinkhole. It's a place where everything's got thrown in and become this big bulky problem because everyone was working quickly to meet this deadline. And that gives you this technical debt that you've then got hanging around your neck. So your core code goes from being, it's viewed from one perspective as a massive investment, but because it's a massive investment and valued so highly, the consequence is that nobody wants to get rid of it even when it's awful. And so I would much rather spend the time up front to separate this stuff out, because that means that I'm not going to get as many maintenance issues down the line. Now, I know that some businesses actually thrive on their maintenance issues, but I want to be a good citizen. If I'm employed to write code, I want to try and be a good citizen with regards to what I feel is going to be in the best interest of that company going forwards. And of course, there's always going to be somebody higher up than me that can say, no, just do it. And I'll take that. But I'm also going to stand there and tell them why I think it should be done cleanly in the first place.
I agree with that. The session we had during Code Rage with Steve McConnell, he talked about technical debt, which was really interesting actually it's a lot of things I hadn't thought about, but just the idea of, sometimes it's appropriate to take on technical debt, right? From a business point of view. But you need to be aware of that, and you need to be paying it down or paying it off as well. So I that's kind of what my point is that it's too easy to say, oh my goodness, we need to fix this now and do it, make a framework just in case we ever need it, when you're not going to need it, right? What is that, Yagna? Yep. You're not going to need it. Yagni, and as well as that you're
not going to need it. Yeah.
It's okay to take on some debt in the right circumstances.
Yeah, and I have former colleagues that would hear me saying these things now and say, "You don't feel that way at all. I've seen you make compromises." So yeah, I get it. I've been there. It's a matter of best intentions, not necessarily what actually gets done, because deadlines are a real thing. So, and one of the comments here, isn't code to an interface a Stephen Ball unbreakable mantra? I don't know that I've heard that from Stephen Ball. I used to work with him in the UK a while back. I don't know that I've heard that from Stephen Ball. The one that always amuses me with Stephen is if it compiles, ship it. So I know that he says that as a joke, but it's kind of contrary to
that's what I was gonna say.
Code to an interface. Now, interfaces actually Nick Hodges is huge on, and in his book, and he's absolutely right about just about everything he says. Although I didn't. That actually kind of reminds.
So anyway, I'm going to wrap up this question here. Good stuff. If you're wanting to improve your ability to get questions answered, definitely check out some of these resources here. It's some good troubleshooting steps, I think, as well. But also, if you're going to post questions online, which is a great opportunity, especially on Stack Overflow, lots of questions get answered on there. It's a good way to make sure your questions are going to get answered. Yeah, Bruce says it's an unbreakable mantra for Nick Hodges. Yep, it is. So a couple things, which I don't have a tab open for this, but I do wanted to mention, it's things that I knew, but I ignored, which I guess goes kind of back to what you were saying a few minutes ago. First of all, if you're doing development, you need to have, we talked about this last week, right? Source control. You be checking your code in source control so that you can, if your system fails, whatever, you can restore it. But then I think the next things you need to start doing is you need to have the ability to, you need to have your development environment backed up and be able to spin up a new development environment fairly quickly, right? Which I would say in the order of hours. And this again is for anything. If you're doing a software development business, you better be able to spin up a whole new workstation for a new developer within a day. But at most. But then, and I think that's real important. And I've gone. This is my third MacBook here in just a few months. My old one died, and the replacement one was defective, so I got a third one. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had everything in a VM that was backed up, and I could then move the VM onto a new Mac, I would have been looking at huge amounts of lost time. So that's a great way to do it. You can also have install scripts or whatever that automate the process of updating
Right.
it. But the other thing that I had reminded myself of is if you have a database, if you do not have a script or some methodology to recreate that database that is checked into source control, you don't have a database.
Yeah. Very true. I actually, so one of the first products I worked on had a utility application for building the database and making sure it was up to date with the latest revision. So it could detect which revision of a database was in place and update it, or it could create it from new. And you're absolutely right. You need that, or you don't have the database. You'll easily forget all of the fields that you needed in it, and what were the data types, and yeah. And VMs are fantastic. Getting a lot of VM love for backing up your system, because so I've stopped using VMs on my home machine, and the reason for it is that I don't actually need them so much now, because the Delphi installer has gotten a lot quicker. The new online download what you need installer is just fantastic. It'll get up. I mean, it'll install easily within an hour, but probably less than that. And I don't have a huge amount of third-party components that I install into my system, but those that I do are generally available in Get It. So, it's click, 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 and the thing's back up and running again. And one thing that I found as a counter-argument, I'm still very much a fan of VMs in production, but one thing I found as a counter to that is there is something to be said for having code that will build with a fresh install. So that's nice too. It just means that I can open my package on any machine that I've installed Delphi on and build it, because of course I wrote it on myself.
I think
all the source code is there. So there's something to be said for that, but absolutely agree. I actually have a minor anecdote on that as well. We had an employee at a previous employer, before we backed our machines up on VM, and what we actually did was create VM images with all of the third-party components installed, and then we'd strip out the license so that we could install the license that was for the particular employee. But before we had that VM, we had an employee that would visit questionable websites and get his computer infected, and prior to the VM it lost almost a week rebuilding that machine. Post VM, within an hour. It says it all. A week's worth of and he still got paid for that week. It wasn't his fault technically that he got a virus. Saves you money.
So I'd
to
write
pay
these
him
down.
for a week of sitting there twiddling his thumb.
Machine quickly.
Make the new installer use previously downloaded files, please. I believe that it does. If it's not, there may be something wrong with it, because it keeps a download cache, I think. I'll check into that. I'll question with product on that.
The one thing about a database VMs, actually, that I'll add is I worked at places where we had multiple versions of things going on, where it was, what I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say. So as we branch the code, right? So we'd have different releases that we'd be developing on, right? So you have a bug fix that's going this release, or a new feature that'd be added on multiple releases. Usually try to keep that to a minimum, right? So we're only working on the one main release, but occasionally you had situations, or you have some older project that was you only occasionally had to bring up for maintenance. And virtual machines were so useful for that, because if you had a set of third-party components that was one version that was in this release, and a set of third-party components that was a different version in this release. Now, I know Get It Package Manager improves that a lot, but not everything's through Get It yet. It was so nice to be able to just spin up the old VM and go in and edit the code, pull it out of source control. So that's the thing. You have to have source control still. Virtual machines is not an excuse for source control. and you pull that code out of source control, build it up there, and fix it. So let's see. You don't have a database in source control. Okay. I would say use virtual machines.
So I wonder if you have a recommendation for an issue I have right now. So I have, I showed to you yesterday a script
Right.
that I use to instance my development server, Linux-based development server. And I'm still using Subversion for source control and Jenkins for build. And it will install those products along with, HTTPS access to the SVN. It'll manage the firewall. It does just about everything that I want a Linux box to do. But it also creates, on the fly, a backup script, which will back up all of those software packages and compress that file and send it to my home NAS. So if my server goes down, I can bring up a new one, run my script and restore the backup, and it's up and running again. So that's all fine and dandy, it works beautifully. But at the moment, I'm on a Windows server because I recently rebuilt for a demo and decided to go with that. And I don't have a backup solution for that server other than imaging it. And I don't want to image it because I don't see why I should pay to store an image on someone else's server when what I really want to do is beam it back to my home NAS. I've got plenty of storage back here. So is there a backup solution that you're aware of that understands things like Jenkins and Subversion and
Probably.
MySQL?
That's a good question. I'm a huge fan of instead of having
So
an
if anyone knows of
actual
one, let me know.
raw backup, which it's important. You probably should have that as well. But having a process to rebuild it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have your script that rebuilds your Linux server, or the script that rebuilds your development environment,
Right.
or whatever that is. I think that's a
server.
really useful asset to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yep.
Well, it's something that, and by the way, that's available on my blog, brolly.chapmanworld.com, or rather chapmanworld.com and search for Brolly. And I think there's a bug in the restoration of the Subversion right now in that version, so I'll get that fixed. But yeah, it's really useful to be able to rebuild it. And what I've found is that because I'm basically taking those files and compressing them to a zip or a gzip, tar file, whatever, and then sending that back to my NAS. What that means is that I can download that file from my NAS and uncompress it on my desktop, and I can go in and literally pick out the data because it's not in an image that I need a server to run, right? So I can just uncompress the file and browse it. And so what that means is that in cases where, say, a restoration fails, should it fail, I don't need to put that image on hardware to run it. I can just go decompress it on any computer and go with it. And yes, I live in Tornado Alley. I've gotten my backup solution quite succinct, and now I just want to get a Windows equivalent of it. Just so you know, I was unfamiliar before moving to Texas with this idea that when it rains, the power goes out.
Oh,
I didn't realize that was a
haven't
thing.
had that. No. Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. I haven't had that happen in a long time.
Well, you're all over headlines here.
In Idaho, our lines are buried, but
Yeah.
I think. So one thing I remember when I was in computer science in high school, that the teacher would have the custodian go out and kill the power to the computer lab occasionally to teach us to save often, save early and save often.
Right. Do you know, as a child learning to code, I was once, doesn't happen in Dallas, I had a couple of power outages in Dallas as well as I recall, but in Austin it's been particularly terrible. Sorry, I got distracted there. In Austin it's been awful, and to make matters worse, we are on some part of the power network which is a split off of a larger sub part of the network. And so what happens is our neighborhood goes down, the power company doesn't know, you report it, they fix the larger network that we're on, but not the sub-network, and they then send you a message on their automated system saying it's back up. If this isn't correct, please respond with it's still down. So you send them a message back saying it's still down, and seconds later they say no, it's back up. So this goes on, and my neighborhood doesn't have any real businesses. It's just a residential area. So every time we've had an outage, it has been, I think the shortest was 18 hours. Absolutely ridiculous. We lose the refrigerator and the freezer every time. But yes, anyway, I was being a misbehaving child when I was learning to code as a kid. And this was on a micro of some kind. Maybe it was as early as the Commodore 64 or maybe an Amiga. And to teach me a lesson, my dad turned off the power on code that I'd been working on for 2 days and not saved. I learned my lesson.
Yeah. Well, I remember
I was also very upset with my father.
Commodores that a lot of people had them. They didn't have the ability to save. The floppy drive?
I was fortunate I had the is it the 1541 Mark II, the floppy drive, which, yeah, so saving the program was, one line instruction. You occasionally save it off.
Yeah, that's I had was cassette.
But I never would.
But I remember lots of times that we would spend hours
sat there waiting for it,
transcribing code from the magazine that you'd get into the Commodore, and you'd run it, and then you'd like don't turn off the computer.
Yep. Hex bytes.
If you turn it off, we lose it, and eventually you're like, okay, well, we've played with it as much as we wanted to. And you turn it off, and then you wouldn't have your program that you spent hours writing anymore.
Well, that was one of my earliest claims
Really?
to fame. Was I got one of my bits of code published in Commodore magazine, and I have since. Yeah, I actually got two things published. One was a question, which so there's a slightly amusing story associated with that. I was known as the geeky kid, the stereotypical in his bedroom coding kid, and I was somewhat teased for it. And this Commodore magazine comes out, and I've asked the question, and the question is related to compression. How do I take? I think I was 11 at the time, so forgive the question, but how do I take the bitmap of the screen and save it in a file that doesn't exceed the size of the disk, right? So anyway, the answer started with, this question is bordering on the impossible. And my rather foolish tormentors at school, I'll call them tormentors or friends, whichever you prefer, misread that as this question is boring. So I got my little victory moment when I said, actually it says bordering, go and learn to read. But the but the thing that I got published was the Commodore 64 was capable of 16 colours. You had a 16 colour palette only. And I got a 17th colour out of the Commodore 64. Not only was it a 17th colour, but it was a beautiful shimmery gold. Basically, it was just a little assembler interrupt routine, which very quickly switched the colour palettes between yellow and white. And if you did that faster than the screen refresh rate, it looked like a shimmering gold. And that got published in C64 magazine. And then a game called Detective used that technique. It was a commercial game that came out using that technique for their cover screen. They had a giant question mark for a game called Detective, giant 3D question mark on a Commodore 64 rotating in shimmery gold. And I cannot for the life of me find that magazine issue now. So I found I found all of the PDFs online, but can I find it?
Let's see. What are the other things here? I think that's all I wanted to mention here, but these are some, I think, and I don't know if anybody else has anything I need to add to this list. These are kind of DevOps type things, but oh, yeah.
Did you put a backup system on there? can remember to back up. Subversion works as a great backup for the code on your local machine because you're backing up to an off-site server, presumably. But you also need to back that server up, particularly if it's not actually off-site, if you're hosting it internally. So. Always have at least 3 copies of your code.
So there's a question here. What do you think of Docker? You use Docker? I looked at it a little bit. I think Docker's pretty cool. I need to get more familiar with it. But that's a really good solution for building Docker modules for the little pieces that you're using, and then you put them all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've not looked at it too closely, to be honest. It's an interesting idea, but I've not had
a literal backup
to jump and go use it.
Backup of all the machines, including offsite. Keep all your code in source control. You need to be able to rebuild your developed machine quickly. This includes bringing up a new developer.
GitHub for the win. So I mentioned earlier, years and years ago, I contributed to some open source projects. A couple of things. A few startup operating systems. I wrote the boot blocks and stuff like that, and just little things. I put a few patches into the Free Pascal compiler at one point, but I've not done anything open source in a long, long time. And GitHub, unfortunately, my understanding is it's all open source. And the reason I've not done open source is because I don't really have the time, not only for the initial write, but for any form of maintenance. So, I really, since I don't work for a commercial organization any longer, in terms of writing code, obviously I work for a commercial organization, because I don't write code for commercial use,
so
my coding
Bitbucket and GitHub
very
are
much a hobby.
competitors.
So GitHub's not really the
rule of
right
thumb
thing
I
for
use.
me.
I guess SourceForge too, but actually they just did a big, huge relaunch. They used to be big, but now they kind of faded away. So GitHub, Bitbucket gives you free private repositories, and then with GitHub, if you pay, you can have private repositories. But the difference between the two is GitHub you can have free collaborators, whereas Bitbucket you pay for collaborators. Right. So GitHub you pay for free repositories on GitHub. Bitbucket you pay for collaborators, and then I think SourceForge has everything on SourceForge is open source. At least it used to be. I haven't checked it out since the relaunch. But then they have a paid service as well. But it's kind of a separate service, I believe.
Right. So I'm sure that all of these services are entirely trustworthy. I'm not being a paranoid person at all. But if I ever launch one of these services, I will steal your IP. So just be aware, don't use my service.
Good to know. Thanks for the warning.
Just don't go with my service, whatever you do.
I thought Stefan was saying something about GitLab, but apparently it was a typo that he meant GitHub. I believe. Or no.
Yeah, I was under the wrong impression. I thought that they were all open source, and I didn't know that they did private repos. I actually have a repo that's already there and backed up, so I'm happy with. But it may be worth looking at rather than building my own service.
I guess I need to learn. So Docker, there's other competitors to Docker too. I need to learn more about Docker. Let's see, that's my note. Okay, I think we're GitLab. Oh, GitLab's an alternative service to GitHub. Oh, he meant GitLab. I'm not familiar with GitLab. GitLab.
Right. I have a feeling that if I've ever come across GitLab, I've just assumed it was GitHub.
All right.
Oh, I
I'll
have
put a
seen
link
this
here to
before.
GitLab as well. So I will put this. I should do this every time, right? To make little notes about what we talk about, and then.
Awesome.
So you're saying GitLab is better, self-hosted for free? Ah. Basket Lab.
That is interesting. You see, learn something on this podcast every week.
Yep. Well, and that's kind of what I do with this live podcast is not only that we can share things, but then also we get some people online, which hopefully we'll start getting more as we start to do this regularly, that can share things as well. We can find and share that'll be useful. What I could do is I could make the this document public as well, and so we could put links and stuff in here as well. That's a good idea. I will do that next time.
I'm actually I'm thinking also
restarting
I would
like
the
that too.
initiative we had before of doing live stream coding sessions. Now, I think that because I know that you're the busiest man on the planet, I would like to find a whipping boy, somebody who can monitor the chat while I code, because
You could
I
get Ian.
cannot
Maybe he would join you for
multitask in
that.
that way. I've tried.
Help moderate the chat because he's there. He's in Dallas as well, and same time zone.
In the same time zone. I'm
that's true.
sure
He's probably
Ian
doing it
has
for a
far
while.
better
I was just
things to
thinking,
do,
he's got
but,
the
I'm
British
sure we can
accent and
find
everything
something
too, right?
to sit in. Yeah, there is something to be said for having somebody with an accent from the old homestead.
Cool. All right.
Makes one feel
Well,
rather at
thanks
home.
everybody for joining us, and I will share. Ian says he volunteers as tribute. I will share the some of the links and these notes in the post with the podcast as well. Audio. Actually, the beginning. Remember last week, the audio we had that good 5-minute chunk where we had the echo kept going and going and going. We didn't have that this time, so that was an improvement. Oh wow! So we have spam comments coming in now.
Yeah. Random.
Okay. Hopefully that fixed it. Okay. Weird.
Seems to have the trick.
We had a one session that was. Oh gosh, what was it? It was a webinar that we were doing live on YouTube, and we had some really bad spammers show up in there. Oh my goodness! I don't know why they do that, but it was really bad. I guess some people are just spam means you've made it. Woohoo! We're in the big time. We're getting spammed now.
Yep.
I don't know. And, well, that number, I found that if you view it afterwards, it's going to be much higher because that number is like live, but sometimes it's not accurate. Anyway, so we'll probably see that it's bigger than that. But I didn't do a very good job getting notification out early to this time. So next time we'll get more people on it, hopefully.
I'll tell you something else to watch for, Jim, on one or two of our webinars that we've done, is people signing in with the names of prominent members of the community. And then being
well, you can. I think
difficult.
Go to a webinar. You can view if you mouse over their name, you can view their email address and see if it's actually them or not, because that email address is actually tied to them because they emails back the link to join the webinar. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for joining us for this episode of the podcast at Delphi.org. Sorry, David couldn't stick around the whole episode. Apparently, the snow was interfering with his wireless internet connection, but we'll hopefully have him back next week. And thank you, Craig, for being on here as well. Every week. And then hopefully we'll have some more live coding sessions too. That'd be great.
In fact, every week. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing one or two.
Great.
Like I
All
said,
right,
just need
we'll
to find a
talk to
schedule.
everyone later.
Person.
Bye, everybody.
So.
Oh, I don't know how to stop this now.
Adios.
No, it's still going. Hold on. I have to stop the stream. I guess I could just stop
Is it still
streaming.
recorded?
But
Is it off yet?
Stop it here through YouTube. I should keep this window open. There it is. Stop streaming.